Out of three things tonight for the talk. One is the topic of guilt, which comes up all the time. I think it was last week's discussion period when most all of the time was devoted to this question of guilt. And then today, in doing some filing, I found a note from last July. Somebody who had ordered some tapes put this question on the bottom. Also, may I make a suggestion or question for consideration by Toni for future tapes? Toni talks frequently using the word reacting. What is the opposite of reacting? Going with the flow or merely being here now without aversion or attachment? Or what are we doing when we are not reacting? Does reacting imply resisting what is happening here and now? So maybe we'll look into this question of what is reacting. Is it opposed to action, or what is action in which there is no reaction? Is that possible? And then if there's time left, there's a letter received from someone who very carefully expressed difficulties in being just with this moment without reacting. The question of guilt. We all know the word, and we all know the feeling. Guilt feelings. Superficial or deep, about what one just did a moment ago, maybe just thought a moment ago, or just said an instant ago, or guilt feelings about what one did quite a while ago, or many years ago. In the discussion period last week, someone said, and this is not a repetition verbatim of what this person said, I don't remember it verbatim. Sometimes I think guilt feelings are just in relation to what other people think, or how other people are affected by what I'm doing. But if other people wouldn't be affected, or other people would not think badly or critically of what I'm doing, would I feel guilt? Guilt seems always to be associated with relationship to other people. Can one examine that? I do something or did something, thought, said something, whatever. And now the thought of what people will think of me if they find out, or as they find out, as they see the action or hear about it, are affected by it. They will judge me, condemn me. And the thought of that judgment, of that disapproval by other people, is that what arouses guilt feelings? Not being thought of well by the community or close friends, relatives, people one works with. Is that what arouses guilt feelings? Not being approved of, being criticized or condemned by others? Or, as this person mentioned, causing pain to other people. And the knowledge of that, or the being confronted with that causes feelings of guilt. If this was not so, if my actions did not affect someone else, causing pain to someone else, then maybe I would not carry around these feelings of guilt. The burden of it, the discomfort of it, pain of it. Is that what causes guilt feelings? Having hurt other people, caused pain, suffering to others through one's own actions, and the thought of this pain in others, the thought of their disapproval and condemnation. And then the burden of this guilt and the feeling, if only other people weren't judging me or getting so affected by what I'm doing, then I wouldn't have this burden of guilt. The resentment often that one is so dependent on what other people think of one. Being angry at oneself for this dependency on other people's approval, good graces. Because one feels the burden of it causes me guilt feelings. Also, are guilt feelings connected with the fear of being found out? This question is often raised: if I was sure no one was going to find out, would I feel guilty? So does guilt involve the fear of being discovered? Like in the biblical story, Adam and Eve hiding behind a tree after eating the forbidden fruit, and the fear of being found out, the guilt at being called by God. If God doesn't see me and doesn't find out I ate this, then I don't have to feel guilty. One person mentioned having left the house to come to the discussion period, and two children crying, wanting to come along or not wanting her to leave, and the guilt feelings about leaving. They're the wondering, am I damaging my children by leaving them? Their crying, is that already a manifestation of hurt, damage? If they didn't cry and said, go, we don't need you, then would I not feel guilty? Feeling guilty, isn't it already a reaction? In thought, in imagination and speculation, idea, thought. A reaction in thought. Thought reacting to what just happened, what one did now or years ago. A step removed from what actually happened. The reaction to it. And with this reaction, strong mental and physical feelings of discomfort, fear, anxiety, resentment, being burdened, wanting to be rid of burden. One step leading to another, and all of the steps away from what actually happened. What is going on right now as I'm doing this? What is going on in the children as they're crying? Can one see them? Why am I leaving? Why am I going to a sitting, to a discussion period? As long as there are already these guilty reactions with their anxiety, fear, anger, resentment, all the ingredients that go with it, and the physical accompaniment to them. As long as that's going on, can one clearly see the whole situation to which one is reacting? Can one look at one's motives? Why am I doing what I'm doing? What are my motives for going, for leaving, for going to wherever I'm going? Am I going to a sitting and a discussion in order to sit with confusion, sit with conflict, allow it to present itself unmolested by reactions of guilt or approval or rationalization? Just allow it to present itself in the presence of no reaction. Is that why I'm going? Maybe in sitting with confusion and allowing it to unravel, open up, without any rationalization. I can tell when I'm rationalizing. Without any rationalization, maybe that's not so bad for the children after all, because staying with them in confusion, resentment, whatever may be moving one, there's no clarity, there's collision. So maybe there need not be any guilt if one really sees clearly one's motives for acting. If one sees self-centeredness wanting to get this pleasure or that escape, then can one wonder about it and look at it without the shadow of reaction, which is guilt. Guilt being escape from the conflict at hand. One may, with one's actions or words or thoughts, cause hurt to others. Just talking recently with someone who mentioned what tremendous hurt was being inflicted on this person's parents by having left the church, all religious affiliation. The parents' grief over it, not just grief, the feeling that the daughter is going to hell, sort of lost to themselves and to God. One has inflicted this through one's action upon one's parents, hasn't one? Or has one? Yes, if one had gone along, this conflict would not have arisen. By having left the church, the belief, the dogma, all the rituals that go with it, one has caused grief. Does that cause guilt in me who has left? Do I feel guilty about this? I was wondering about this when this came up. And remembering the days at the Zen Center. Was there guilt in leaving? Feelings of guilt? I don't think there were. Even though it was very evident that a lot of pain was inflicted on a lot of people. Pain, anxiety, anger, feelings of insecurity, threat. The leaving caused all that, and yet there was not feelings of guilt. There was not the reaction of guilt. Because this was what needed to be done, what had to be done. There was no choice in this. It was not to gain personal pleasure or whatever. It was not self-serving. I don't think it was. And yet, thinking farther back, there were quite frequently guilt feelings about staying, about taking the easy way of going along and producing rationalizations for going along with things. Not wanting the difficulty of conflict and all that was anticipated in the mind, shoving it aside with rationalizations of there were so many available. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. And yet, in every once in a while, breaking through these rationalizations, putting them aside and just looking what one was doing, feelings of guilt over not leaving, going along, taking the easy way out, which was self-serving, avoiding anticipated discomfort. So one cannot make a general statement that just causing pain through one's actions must result in guilt feelings. It may not. And yet, not blur the fact or ignore the fact that pain is being caused, and understanding why, how, seeing it, and yet not reacting with guilt. Which always implies, doesn't it, I should have done differently, I could have done differently. I must not do this, this is wrong. In a very fragmented way, in a very limited way. It's so dangerous because the brain is so resourceful in creating illusions for the rightness of our action. One hears this all the time about the allure of religious sects and cults to join, and that being the right thing to do. The right thing to leave parents, family, or whatever one is engaged in, and join. That's just one example that comes to mind, the whole Jonestown episode, which is not a unique case. How can one be clear and sure that one is not rationalizing the selflessness of one's actions? The altruism or rightness of it, the purity of it. How can one be sure? One can look and question. Is one assuaging feelings of guilt by ready rationalizations for the rightness of one's action? It can all open up if one questions, not knowing. Not knowing from the outset, just looking. And all the inner dialogues and pictures and images and will reveal themselves. I think that guilt feelings are always associated with self-centered action. Not meaning that all self-centered action results in guilt feelings. But when there are feelings of guilt, there's self-centeredness. The guilt itself being the perpetuation of self, reacting to itself. I shouldn't have done this, I should have done better, I will become better, or I was justified. I want to get rid of this guilt. In this confusion of action and reaction and counter-reaction, can there be a moment of stillness, of wondering about the whole thing, and listening out of quietness? Not trying to get out of the confusion or clarify it, but sitting with it. Confusion always being, it shouldn't be like this, it should be like that. Or which way should it be? Can one see that guilt feelings are a step away from being directly, listening directly, looking directly at what one is doing or did? That this hides and blurs? This person who asked, could you say something about action? All you seem to talk about is reaction. Is action the opposite of reaction? And what is it? That's a tremendously worthwhile question to question reaction. Because if one begins to look and listen, one may find that one's whole waking hours and dreaming hours are almost nothing but reaction. I don't think until we really pay attention to this do we fathom that we're reacting all the time. Or don't we? Is there any moment during our waking hours or sleeping hours when there is no reaction? And I don't mean the numbness. Numbness is a reaction to too much pain or too much stimulation. Body and mind reacts with numbness or dullness. That's not no reaction. That's also reaction. We see something, hear something, are spoken to, or and there's immediately reaction, isn't there? A reaction bringing oneself into the picture. Self being instantly born. The moment one sees something, hears something, is talked to, friendly or unfriendly, is asked something or listens to a conversation, isn't there instantly reaction, including the reaction, I don't know what to say. I should say something, but I don't know what to say. Or I know what to say. I know about this. I want others to hear about it. One cannot begin to describe and list it, but one can watch it and be amazed. And then wonder, like this person did. A week ago we had a workshop in Springwater. A philosophy professor of a nearby university brought 12 students to a workshop arranged for it, and one of the students asked about this, whether in relationship there could be anything but reaction. This person had started to observe this, that no matter what happened in relationship, there was reaction, and then reaction to the reaction and counter-reaction. And wondering whether there could be anything else. Very similar question. What is action? He asked, without reaction. Which would mean, wouldn't it, the total absence of reaction in the midst of life. Using this as a general designation for everything that's going on, inside and out. An absence of reaction, not meaning dullness, indifference, or numbness, but complete openness without immediately reacting, bringing the self into it. What it means to me, what I should do, how I should be seen or heard. Projecting the image, wanting approval or support for the image, or the hurt when it is not being approved or criticized. Is it possible? I think it's a tremendous question. Not just a tremendous question, but a tremendous investigation or exploration, whether there can be a moment of not reacting, a moratorium, as it were, for a moment, not by biting the tongue or controlling a reaction, because control is also reaction. I shouldn't react. I have made a vow here to remain without reaction for a moment every day. That's reaction. A moment of complete non-division, non-separation from what is, without having classified it yet or categorized it yet, brought it in relationship with me, my needs, my fears, my wants. Just an open, wide-eyed, wide-eared, vulnerable, not knowing and listening. I think at such a moment the whole universe opens up simultaneously. The person with whom one may be talking, or in whatever the relationship may be, may demand a reaction. So can there be action which is not a reaction, which has no motive? Which comes out of the open perception of this instant? I think the open perception of this instant is action. Because there's no reaction in it. I don't know. But here. Are we so programmed, so conditioned and habituated that this door cannot open? The door of no program, no habit, no conditioning, responding. Of course, the very language we use is a conditioning. The whole body functions in a conditioned, programmed way. The heartbeat, the breathing, the hearing of what somebody says. We're not talking about those fundamental physical reactions. We're talking strictly about psychological reaction. Hold it in abeyance, to leave it in abeyance for a moment of listening. A pause. In which there can be, I don't know what. And if the reaction has already taken place, can that be seen, heard? One hears oneself reacting, expounding, explaining oneself, hanging on to a point one is making in order to be heard, to be seen as important, to feel oneself important. Can one hear that without guilt feelings? I shouldn't be this way, I shouldn't be reacting. That's reacting to our reactions. Do you see that? To become aware of what is going on as we react from moment to moment. And in this listening, no guilt, but seeing what is going on, becoming aware of it, without guilt. Which means the thought, I shouldn't have done this, I'm hopeless, I'm still reacting. I'll read this letter. I do have expectations of how things ought to be, which are different from how they are. It is very difficult to stay with what is when it is so painful. This person lives quite a ways away and has 2 little children and is not able to come more than maybe once a year for just a brief visit. There are glimpses of what it is to have no expectations, no comparisons, adding nothing to whatever is happening. When fear wells up, sometimes there is a stopping to look at what is fearful. Some strange bodily sensations or the sense of unreality. For a moment, there is just this examining, nothing to think about, no fear. Then there is a backing off as thoughts flood in and a desire for escape arises. This sequence might occur over and over with the resultant feelings of turmoil. Headaches have downgraded to a constant dull tension in one or the other temple. I've given considerable attention to what is the basis for this tension. It seems to be some sense of struggle, me versus the world. Logically, this strikes me as rather odd. Nevertheless, I notice myself settling into a strained, tense attitude, as if putting up resistance against something or everything out there, in quotation marks. There is also a tinge of the old feeling of fear of something dreadful befalling me if I don't stand guard. I find myself searching for anything to occupy my time, to escape the tensions that I feel, knowing all the while exactly why I'm doing this. And when I'm occupied with some project, I hurry through it, just wanting to get it done so that I can frantically search for something else to fill the time. Everything I do seems pointless, always the sense of escape, waiting for a better time to come and yet seeing that this is deluding myself. There are ideas, if I continue to sit and to be attentive, I'll be rewarded with calmness, feeling better. So I exert effort to sit and be attentive, awaiting the reward, evaluating the tensions I feel, becoming discouraged when there is no payoff, feeling confused because everything is not going according to plan. And then there are glimpses, seeing through all this, just being whatever is at the moment, without creating a problem which must then be solved by some action of my own invention. My mind wants so much to find a solution, a course of action by which I might rid myself of discomfort, but it is increasingly clear that anything I can imagine is just more of the same. Sometimes, when I have been thinking in this way, there is a sense of being backed into a corner by thinking. The thoughts shut down, and there is the relief of stepping out and away from them all. And then the cycle begins all over again. It's difficult to describe a mental process, but perhaps you get a feel of what is happening. I've considered repeatedly how I might attend a retreat, but it just doesn't seem possible for at least another year, as my child continues to nurse and is very dependent on me. I do want to make another weekend visit to Springwater before too long, and so forth. It says, although meeting with you for a few hours seems a poor second to working with you for a week. I begin to wonder if there can be an insight, a resolution outside of a retreat setting. No doubt this is possible, but is it possible for me? Even more important, will this body-mind be able to withstand the strain until such a time might come? But I suppose there's no point in such questions. I can only do as I am doing. This was the response. You're right, there's no point in asking whether the body-mind can withstand the strain until insight comes. By far the heaviest strain which thinking creates for the human being is that of time. Psychological time, not the time of the calendar. What will happen in the future, good or bad, based on what we know from the past, carried along in memory. Insight never happens in the future through the stress of thinking. It is only in seeing what is actually happening right now, without any conflict of resistance, that whatever is taking place at this instant can also wither away. So, can you, as you're living from moment to moment, enter into the stillness, the silence of no resistance, no matter how achy, dull, anxious, strained things feel inside and out? What is this feeling of opposition to what is out there? If I listen to the whole thing with intense curiosity, quietly tracing it as it evolves on its own, without imposing any will. In nursing your child, can there be deep quietness, just being the whole thing? In cooking, cleaning, walking, eating, any moment of stillness is of quiet depth if we do not get stuck in the pain and anxiety of running away in thought. Thought is not listening. Listening goes beyond thinking. Don't seek relief, but remain with what is actually there without knowing it, without recognizing it, not willing it away. Let the mind be deeply, spaciously quiet in allowing everything to do what it will, without imposing the limitation of what may happen tomorrow or what happened yesterday. Come and listen without reaction. We will end here for tonight.